Welcome to History Unpacked. If you enjoy the content, consider subscribing. We post every week and we welcome any feedback. We hope you enjoy the second part of this topic. In the last episode, we looked at how South Korea's youth, often referred to as the Npo generation, face a complex web of economic, social, and cultural pressures that have redefined the path to adulthood. From rising house prices to job insecurity, to shifting gender roles and psychological burnout, young South Koreans are navigating a society in flux. Their response is not loud rebellion but quiet withdrawal, redefinition and subtle resistance. In this episode, we'll examine the major pressures facing Korean youth today and the ways these pressures are reflected in media, culture and comparison to global youth trends. In South Korea, securing a job at a chaebol, a family-run conglomerate like Samsung, Hyundai or LG, is often seen as the ultimate goal for graduates. These positions promise stability, prestige and competitive benefits. Yet the reality is that only a small fraction of job seekers ever reach these elite roles. The vast majority are left to navigate an economy marked by irregular work, freelance gigs and low-wage service jobs. This polarization of the labour market has led to years of exam preparation, resume building and interview attempts, often ending in disillusionment. The result is a generation that is highly educated but unemployed, with rising rates of NEETs, young people not in education, employment or training. The mismatch between expectations and reality has bred frustration and a quiet retreat from traditional career paths. Many young people prepare for years to enter a chaebol, often enrolling in expensive prep courses, earning multiple degrees, and accumulating unpaid internships. However, once inside, employees frequently report long working hours, rigid hierarchies, and intense internal competition. Those outside the chaebol bubble face an unpredictable market with fewer protections, leaving them vulnerable to exploitation and career instability. The pressure to make it often results in burnout long before careers even begin. South Korea's pop culture, especially dramas, films, and music, has become a subtle but powerful outlet for youth anxiety. Television shows like Misang and My Mister portray the monotony and emotional toll of modern work life, while webtoons and indie films explore issues like class disparity, mental illness, and alienation. Even within the global K-pop industry, groups like BTS have touched on themes of burnout, identity struggles, and emotional resilience. These narratives act as mirrors, offering solidarity for viewers who see their experiences reflected on screen. In a society where direct protest is often discouraged, culture has become a space for quiet resistance and emotional truth-telling. Streaming platforms have further expanded across the youth-driven narratives, with platforms like Netflix showcasing Korean shows that tackle heavy themes like social inequality in movies like Extracurricular, workplace harassment, The Glory, or generational disillusionment, Move to Heaven. Youth also turn to YouTube and TikTok to share personal stories, vent frustrations, and build micro-communities that foster identity and resilience. A growing vocabulary reflects the identity shifts within Korean youth culture. Terms like Npo, which means giving up on a number of life goals, Heljoseon, describing Korea as a hopelessly hierarchical society, and YOLO, you only live once, capture the coping strategies of a generation disillusioned with long-term aspirations. Hanjok, people who choose to live, eat and drink alone, and Goshiwon life, which refers to the tiny cramped living quarters, speak to both economic constraints and changing attitudes towards solitude. These terms, they're not just slang, they signal a redefinition of adulthood. Rather than following traditional paths, young Koreans are crafting alternative lifestyles centered on survival, minimalism, and emotional autonomy. The normalization of solo activities like hanbap, eating alone, and hansul, drinking alone, marks a societal shift away from traditional collective living towards personal survival. Young people increasingly value time and mental space over traditional social obligations. Meanwhile, YOLO culture has evolved into a blend of self care and subtle defiance. If systems fail to reward sacrifice, one may well as enjoy fleeting pleasures. As women increasingly delay or reject marriage and motherhood in pursuit of autonomy and equity, a gender backlash has emerged. Online forums highlight grievances from young men over military service, dating dynamics, and perceived social bias. Movements such as 4B, no dating, no marriage, no sex, or childbirth, and Escape the Corset, resisting beauty norms, exemplify feminist resistance. Rather than just a battle between genders, these tensions reflect deeper frustration with outdated roles and social expectations. Both men and women feel constrained, albeit in different ways. At its core, this conflict is about how to construct fairer and more flexible identities in a rapidly changing society. The gender divide is not only cultural, but economic. Wage gaps, glass ceilings, and unequal domestic expectations continue to marginalize women. Despite high educational attainment that these women have, many young women, for example, fear that marriage will trap them in unpaid domestic labor, especially given the lack of robust childcare or support systems. On the other hand, men express resentment over economic pressures and mandatory military service, which delay their entry into the job market. South Korea's ENPO generation is part of a broader East Asian pattern. In Japan, the Satori generation and the hikikomori phenomenon mirror Korea's youth retreat from ambition and participation. In China, Tangping, lying flat, and Bailin, letting it rot, describe passive resistance to societal pressure. Western parallels include quiet quitting and the Great Resignation, where youth limit their investment in exploitative work cultures. While cultural and political contexts differ, the emotional core remains the same: disillusionment with systems that fail to deliver stability, meaning, or even fairness. What sets the Korean case apart is the intensity of social pressure combined with hypermodern digital connectivity. In China, despite censorship, platforms like WeChat and Weibo still circulate viral content critiquing social expectations. In Japan, cultural stoicism has resulted in long-standing social withdrawal. Korea exists somewhere in between, digitally expressive but culturally restrained, leading to unique manifestations of shared global malaise. Recognizing the severity of youth disengagement, the South Korean government has launched housing subsidies, job programs, and childbirth incentives. However, these policies are often perceived as superficial or too slow to counter systematic issues like housing speculation and chaebol dominance. The key problem is trust. Young people are not convinced these measures reflect genuine structural change. Without addressing core inequalities in housing, education, and employment, policy solutions will continue to feel inadequate. The challenge is not just to offer support, but to rebuild credibility. Some pilot programs like youth allowance schemes for unemployed adults have shown promise, but their reach remains limited. Critics argue that policies are often developed without genuine youth consultation. Furthermore, structural power still rests with older generations, especially within the National Assembly and corporate boardrooms, making it difficult for reform to gain momentum. Far from apathetic, Korea's ENPO generation is actively reimagining what adulthood, success, and fulfillment look like. Their decision to remain single, live alone, or pursue creative or freelance work reflect not surrender but adaptation. Across music, media, language, and lifestyle, young Koreans are crafting a new story, one shaped less by obligation and more by dignity.